a guy that knows a little bit of something about defense. That's a former Sooner and Cincinnati Bengals linebacker, Jordan Evans. He's going to join us to talk about the Oklahoma Sooners 2024 defense and why we can feel a little bit optimistic about what's coming in 2025 for the Oklahoma Sooners. We'll do that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And joining us now here on Locked On Sooners, again, your team every day. We got Jordan Evans, former Oklahoma Sooners linebacker, former Cincinnati Bengals linebacker, ready to provide his insight and analysis to Oklahoma's 2024 season and then looking ahead to 2025. So, Jordan, I just want to kind of get your big picture opinion on just the 2024 season as a whole, because we've talked about it a lot. But maybe you haven't gotten to share your thoughts on what transpired and what went down in 2024.
Well, I think any former player and obviously OU fans will not see this year as a success. I mean, obviously the record in itself shows another bowl loss. I mean, I remember when I was at OU, we went 8-5, lost our bowl game to Clemson. And that was like one of the worst years. I remember hearing like rumors that like, oh, Bob was played. I mean, it was crazy what we were hearing. But that's just the high expectation that Oklahoma has. We are one of the top programs in the history of college sports. We have always been at the top at every ranking and or championships going after those. And so when we're not anywhere near that, it's obviously a little disappointing. And we don't want that, nor do we want to continue in that.
So, yeah, speaking of that year at Clemson, it was a tough year. I remember that. Yeah, you played, I think, what was the Insight Bowl out in Orlando?
Yeah.
And, yeah, that was one of those. That was definitely tough. What was it like in the locker room going through that adversity? Because I'm assuming that it's probably similar here today for the players trying to get through that. What was it like getting through that as a team?
No, it was actually very frustrating. And like you said, I bet it's very similar because when you look at, like, some of the players we had, we shouldn't have been 8-5, right?
Yeah.
And I think, for the same, there's a lot of talent now. The difference between, I think, our year and their years, they have way more injuries than we had, at least if I can remember correctly. Mm-hmm. But it was just frustrating because you knew what we could be, and we were missing some pieces. And we just knew that, like, hey, we locked in, and we did what we did. Certain pieces came in. Some people stepped up in bigger roles and played at better levels. And next, my junior year, I think we went 15-1 in the regular season and lost to Clemson again, but this time playoffs.
That is true.
Yeah, and then so when you go from having a disappointing season as a team, what do you kind of try to lay your hopes on? You put in the work, you believe in the process. So for this team, from 2024 going to 2025, how do you think that they're trying to keep the confidence that they have?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing, especially in today's game, which is a lot different than mine, is this transfer portal and bringing in the right pieces and players. I mean, it's almost like free agency now. Whereas when we was there, it was really about each and every single person becoming a lot better than what they were. Everybody has to come to the table, become a better player, because that's all we really had. We couldn't really rely on bringing in certain pieces that we were missing. No, hey, Jordan and Dominic Alexander, you are our linebackers. Y'all did pretty well y'all's first 2 years, but as a junior, it's time to take on a different role. And each person from first to the third string all had to do those things. And it started as a player development. Each person had to develop, become better what they were last year. And that's kind of where we were at. I would say it's the same still for them. I know we have guys that come back. I know that, we don't want to be someone that's always in the transfer portal because that doesn't, I think, bring in the continuity and longevity of success. But, again, it's a little different. So, for me, I think the offseason development, don't be the person you were last year, right?
So in your time at Oklahoma, I can't recall fully if there were any JUCO players that actually came in and played with you all. If I'm correct, there were some defenders that came from JUCO. Bob Stoops was infamous for doing that. That was also the big formula from Nebraska, living in that JUCO portion. When you brought those players in, How did you build up that chemistry with them for them to be able to be quick contributors? I mean, the best part is they play college football, so they have an understanding of the game. But what were some of the things you all did to get them going? As to me, when it comes to JUCO, starting to feel like that's kind of how the transfer portal is working in some capacities.
Yeah, well, I would say the good thing is it's like you're in college, so you guys are with each other 24/7. School, study hours, and then with Schmitty, right? And so you're spending a lot of time, and I really do believe there's a lot of, I guess, team building through suffering, right? And so when you're going through those workouts and I'm happy to be there, or everyone's relying on me to make sure I make my time, or that I hit this list so that the rest of the team doesn't punish. And next thing you know, these JUCO guys got coming in, and these guys are starting to understand our culture and how we work. And you seeing them working just as hard as yourselves because they want to be part of the team, it naturally brings you guys together and brings that bond. And so that's kind of what we did. And, essentially they're all still kids in a sense, and they're still young and they're still hanging out, and that helps.
Yeah, that leadership portion of that makes a big difference. And I think you might be able to say, okay, that's where some of the difference lied between the Oklahoma Sooners offense and the defense in 2024 is, well, on defense, you had guys like Danny Stutsman and Ethan Downs leading the way, Billy Bowman leading the way for the defense, where on offense, you turned over your entire offensive line. You were missing Dylan Gabriel. A lot of the guys that were expected to be leaders were injured. So let's look at the defense real quick, because you've got some specific insight that you can provide there. What made the Oklahoma defense so good in 2024?
Well, I think what you said when you spoke about some of the leadership, that is key, because they also bring an identity to the team. I mean, you almost knew what you were going to get from Danny Stutsman week in and week out. You almost knew exactly what you're going to get from Bowman week in and week out. And that filtrates through the entire team, which is why I still think our defense was amazing this year. I think they played at a very high level, especially given some of the circumstances they had to play under. I think when you look at some of their statistics, they're ranked in the top 30 to 40 out of 100 plus teams, which is a lot higher than some of the previous OU defenses have done. And that I think is a direct stem of obviously coaching and game plan, but the players taking initiative and, having guys like Danny Stutsman and guys like Bowman in the back end. And then that's just kind of filtrating to everybody else. So I always believe, when you allow your light to shine, you liberate others to do the same. So when you have your top guys, your leaders playing at a high level, those other guys want to do the same. And that's why, I was a fan of like Kip Lewis, guys like him, who I think is in his own. When everybody's balling, he's balling. It's just complementary football on one side at least.
Yeah, speaking of that linebacker room, the young players, you've got Kip Lewis and you got Kobe McKenzie, who's basically going to be the leaders going forward. And then you have one of our older statesmen, still young, in Jaron Canick, who a lot of us feel like could be that next one. He's got the speed. It just seems like he has a tendency of being in the wrong spot sometimes, but he's so fast that he makes up for a lot of it there. When it comes to that linebacker room, especially looking at the young and old, I know you mentioned Kip. How do you feel about, the development with Kobe as well as Canick and going down the line with some of those players? Samuel Mosigo, how do you see them continuing to elevate what Danny Stutsman was able to do?
Well, and I think that's what you said, is those young guys have to be able to accept and be prepared to take that role. I know when I look at myself, we had a great leader in Eric Stryker. Eric Stryker was a phenomenal captain, a phenomenal leader, a phenomenal player. And my junior year, I was able to just go out there and ball out, and Stryker was the captain. Well, my senior year, I had to walk into that role, and I'll be honest with you guys, I wasn't the best leader and captain, I would say, for the beginning portion of my career, of that senior year, which is why we lost those 2 games and weren't playing at a high level. But when I saw myself flip the script, the rest of the team, not team, but defensively at least, started playing better. And so, first off, those young guys have to be willing, I guess you could say, to accept that role, take the next steps. Kip's already a baller. Kobe's already a baller. Who did you say? I don't even know how to say his last name, but he's
Sammy Omosigo.
Yeah, he's showing that he can play. And so all it is now is, are you willing to put in that January to July type work? Be accountable, be there. Not one of those guys that always gets in trouble, things like that. and then your play will go along with the integrity that you have as a person, and it'll continue to go on as it was before. And with Jaren Kanak, did I say his last name right? I know sometimes I mispronounce it, but
Yeah, Jaren Kanak, yeah.
Kanak, I'm sorry, Kanak. But yeah, I think he has phenomenal potential. It's time for him to step up because, at this time of your career, if you don't, there's potential that a young guy they might try to put in for you. And so he needs to, understand that and at the same time trust himself. I think he's one of those guys that if I was able to sit with him in the locker room and watch film with him to truly see what goes on. But you can't deny that he's athletically gifted. Obviously, we can say he knows the system now. He's been there for long enough. And when he's in there, he can make plays. So it's just time for him, I think, to develop that confidence, know that, hey, this is me, I can do this, and then he'll have a great rest of his college career.
We're going to talk a little bit about Jaren Kanak's running buddy, who's now going to be off to the NFL, and get Jordan's opinion on what Danny Stutsman's future holds, as well as what Oklahoma's defense future holds. Coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. We're joined here by Jordan Evans, former Oklahoma Sooners linebacker and Cincinnati Bengals linebacker. Danny Stutsman's moving off to the NFL. He created quite a legacy for himself here during these 4 seasons at Oklahoma. What is it about his game do you think is going to translate so well to the next level?
First off, he has a high motor, right? That's one thing that I personally have always been jealous of when I see other players that just have that natural high motor where it's like they're nonstop, sideline to sideline. For some reason, no matter how great a shape I was in, maybe you can just blame that's one of my player flaws, that I did not have that same high motor that some of these guys have. And so that's one thing, because whether he gets the opportunity to start very early or if he's going to have to be a special teams player to work his way up, if he has that motor where he works hard, he's flying around, always on the screen, he's always on, and on film, if you watch a film, he's always there. That is a very great thing to have, especially as a rookie trying to establish yourself in the locker room as a trusted player and as a ball player.
When it comes to you playing with the Bengals, for, I think you were there, what was that, 5 years in the NFL?
Yes, sir.
5 years in the NFL. What do you see Danny will need to do in order to be able to have that long of a time in NFL? Because it's not easy being there. I think the average year is 3 years that players last in the league, and you made it to 5, which, like I say, is very tough, and that's a testament to your hard work and being there. Sure. What do you see Danny will need to do to be able to get that type of longevity in the NFL and be able to continue to go forward longer, if possible?
Yeah, for sure. 2 things, obviously, off rip is your health. Right. You got to take care of your body. And so there's going to be some things, and I don't know how it is now, and I don't know how well he trained and, took care of his diets and sleep and stuff like that. But that's number one. And that's going to be a transition when you get to the NFL. A lot of that is on you. You're the professional. You're the person that has to make sure you're doing things to take care and be prepared to play on Sunday. And that also includes your mental. So being on a playbook, again, that's something that I would like to sit down and watch the film. And if he's a guy that, hey, he makes up for it because he just naturally is in the right spot, but does he understand why he's there? Those 2 things right there, taking care of your body, taking care of your mental, understanding the playbook, knowing every position on defense. That's what made me last so long, is not only did I play every phase in multiple positions on special teams, there wasn't a position almost on the defense that I didn't know, to the point where I think in 2019, I was in the D-line room playing basically a stand-up outside DN linebacker because I knew the playbook. And I was able to play every position. And so that's one thing I would tell Danny. And then also part 2 is that just because, and I believe he'll be a higher draft pick choice, whether you're a 1st or 7th rounder, the easy work or the hard work now begins. You work harder now than you did in college. Because if you think that, I made it, and I start to relax, that's when you'll lose your spot. Because the NFL, you're playing with the best of the best. So each and every year, you have to become a better player than you were the year before. So wherever he lacks, wherever his weaknesses in his college career, find a way to make those your strengths and then continue to build on from there.
I think that's just good advice for anybody, a high school player, college player, NFL player. I got a kid that goes to my church that's just going to be a freshman in high school. So I'm gonna have to make sure that he sees this, make sure he knows, make sure you know all the positions along the offensive line, not just center, so that you can go play wherever. Looking at 2025, we got Dominic Williams, defensive tackle, coming back for the Oklahoma Sooners. How big is it that you're getting somebody with that experience and that ability back into the interior defensive line room?
No, it's definitely great. Especially year 2 in the SEC, maybe we're a little more grounded, a little more familiar. And then I know you still have some young guys on the team. We had that freshman that actually played pretty well and got some freshman accolades along with some other the people that are going to come in. And so having that, again, like the Danny and the Billy in the secondary and the back end, having that also in the front line is very, very important. Holding each other accountable, doing those things to make people play at a high level, it is very contagious. When I think of the front line, I think of my junior year, Charles Tapper. Played at he was a really good teammate. Made a lot of plays. He worked hard. I mean, it was just one of those people that you wanted to have on your team. And like I said, junior year, I think was the best defense that I was a part of. And you see at every level, those guys were needed. And so having him come back is great. Again, we got some roles to fill. But I think one of the things that I enjoyed about our defense is there was a lot of people play. I mean, they rotate. Honestly, in my opinion, they rotate more than I would like. But, many people are getting opportunities to play. And so, therefore, there's a lot of guys that will be here next year that have some experience from the year before.
As you mentioned that, how appealing is it for a young player to see that you have 2 freshmen All-Americans on your roster at defensive tackle as well as corner? How appealing would that be to a younger version of yourself that if I go out there and ball out, they'll actually put me in the game? Right. Is that something that would jump out to you if you were a recruit?
No, for sure. I know when I was coming out, I had a certain criteria when I was looking at schools. And so one of the criteria was the ability to play. I did not want to come to a loaded 12 linebacker roster that had every class, because then I wanted my opportunities of playing wouldn't be that high. And so, I think that's very appealing because, like you said, if I go out here and I do the things I'm supposed to do, they'll put me out there and I'll be able to have an opportunity to showcase my talents and then, be able to win a starting spot, make NIL money, and then get an opportunity to go to the NFL.
Okay. I got 2 fun ones for you real quick. One, you made it to the last NCAA football game created in 2014. So you were able to see yourself on the game. Now they came out with 25. Did you ever play as yourself on NCAA 14 back then?
For sure. Definitely did. Play with myself in the league, too. I mean, if I'm on the game, I'm going to be in there for sure. That was like one of the – I don't know. I mean, in college, in hindsight, I didn't think I didn't think I was as big of a deal as I did when I got to the league. Mm-hmm. But, in college, we're playing it. It was cool. I put myself in there. But once I got to the league, I ain't gonna lie, it was different. It was that's real. And I get I get the Madden check for it, so it's real. So, I playing when I got to the league, I did that. And then hearing all my friends or my nephews and stuff like that being like, oh, I'm playing with my big cousin or something like that. It was kind of cool.
Do you have a good Schmitty story for us? Everybody I've ever talked to, everybody's got at least one good Schmitty story that has happened that's, rated PG enough. You got a good story for us?
Yeah, I probably do. Let me think. I mean, let's see here. Okay, so, all right. So it was him and Russ. There was those 2 guys. But I don't know if it was during the season or during the off season. But we were about to be on break. And for some reason, all of us decided not to show up to that Wednesday morning, Thursday morning workout. Because we were it was just school. There was no practice or nothing. It was time to go. And so we all were like, bro, we're not going. We're just going to go to school and then go for the break and then just deal with the consequences when we get back on Monday. Well, next thing you know, I get a text talking about Schmitty and Russ are driving through campus, picking players up and taking them back into the locker room to work them out. Mind you, I'm in class. I went across town to my home, my family, and a handful of people were literally walking from class, got picked up, took to the indoor and had to do punishment. He wasn't letting nothing slide.
And I see why those teams win 11-2 every year.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's countless Schmitty stories, and and just his conversations that he has with you, that's the most confusing. You don't know if you should say yes sir or not say a word. You don't know if you're going to be on a Stairmaster for 30 minutes to an hour. Things like that was just, it was just constant with Smitty. But I do also, when I say to him, I went up to him a few years ago. I saw him back at OU when I was there for practice. Shook his hand, and I told him, hey, man, I apologize for the hard-headed knuckle self I could have been. And I truly appreciate and I see why you did what you did, because it's one of those things that you don't understand maybe then, but when you look back at it, you realize what he was doing.
Yeah, man. Sometimes you don't always see the fruit of it in the middle of it. You're seeing the seeds being laid, but you're not understanding how it's going to play out down the road. And obviously you're a testament to that hard work. So final thing here before we get out of here, Jordan, give us a reason to be optimistic about Oklahoma football in 2025.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you have an opportunity to play again, that's one opportunity. Part two is the fact that we've seen improvement on one side of the ball, a drastic amount of improvement, right? I mean, I will be honest, our defense, some of the years I was there, was horrendous and got worse under Lincoln. Now, since then, we have become a very competitive defensive team. So we make the right hire at the University of Oklahoma, as we've seen in times past where OU was one of the most dominant offenses. Now, put those type of offenses with the defense that we already have, you have your answer. And so we've hired Arbuckle, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, Ben Arbuckle.
He has shown to have good offenses. I think he's been a part of 3 NFL caliber quarterbacks. And now he's here at OU, brought in the number 1 transfer portal, right? Why not be optimistic? Yeah, we might have lost some skilled guys, but we'll have some other guys step up. We've had some guys come back. So if we keep this defense playing how they're playing, and we're just a top 50 offense, I think the win-loss looks a lot different. We're back being competitive, and then that in itself should give a lot of people optimism going into year 2025.
Yeah, if you really think about it, with the bad offense, we won 6 games.
I mean, a stagnant offense, and complementary football is real. So when you have an offense that isn't being productive, it makes it so much harder on defense. And think about how many games we were actually in it because of how well our defense was playing. So like I said, what OU was for many, many years with our offense is, we get back to that just even to the slightest degree with the defense that we're showing to have for the past couple of years, we're a problem. People know that.
And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Make sure you go follow Jordan over there on the Twitters at Jordan_Evans_50. Go get all the football insight, life insight. If you're a high school player looking to make it to the next level, shoot him a question. I'm sure he'd love to answer it for you. He's got all kinds of words of wisdom that he'd love to provide for all those trying to make the jump. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports, myself at John 9 Williams. But until next time, Boomer
Sooner. Yes, sir.